Hello, everyone. How are you feeling? Like, are you tired already? It's like second day. How many have been already to lunch? Good, good. How many of you are testers, actually, on your daily work? Any project managers? Product owners? Scrum masters? Okay, sounds good. So, the thing that I want to talk with you about today is organizing ethical QA rules on an organizational level. Like, there's like a lot of presentations today and yesterday about some technical stuff, how to use different tools, how to approach very specific products. My presentation is slightly different. It's more connected with a mindset, with the approach to testing as a whole, and with organizing the whole QA department, and how to do it to don't face ethical dilemmas, or if you face them, how to solve them quickly and efficiently. So, let's start with something that is a real case scenario that happened in automotive. How many of you are familiar with the Dieselgate, with the problems with the engines from the Volkswagen? Not so many. So, the thing that happened was that there was multiple thousands of engines that were cheating during the test for the emissions of the for the usage, and what the Volkswagen wanted to sell their engines and their cars in the US, and they want to pass the regulatory conditions in the US, so they found a way to cheat over there. The thing that happened there, that was they were cheating during the test. I will describe it in more details later, how they do it. But what is the most important thing that happened? It was during 6 years, there was over 10 million cars sold with not working. Is it working still? Yeah, okay. With not wrongly working engines. When everything goes out to the market, then the value of the stock price for the Volkswagen was like dropped by 1/3. The CEO of Volkswagen has to resign, and there was a lot of employees involved in the whole scenario, how this happened. The one of the latest fines that happened connected with the Dieselgate was hitting Porsche like a few months ago, even if it's a problem from 2015. There was a Daimler, Mercedes was calling the service action for their cars connected with the diesel engines and the emissions. There was like over 30 billions of dollars for fines for many companies that were producing cars. The Volkswagen CEO in the United States is charged by fraud and conspiracy. So this is like organized crime in the US. And he's like facing now the judge, and probably will get some sort of a sentence. And the ADAC, when they put a test in Europe for checking how other producers of engines are passing the test, it turns out that almost everybody were cheating in some way. Like there's Alfa Romeo, Kia, BMW, Nissan, Hyundai, almost everybody. And how was it working? So actually there was like two parts of the solution. So the one part was the hardware that was putting, if it was recognizing that this is like a test environment, not driving on a road, then it was putting the gas emission back to the engine just to clean them more. And there was a software piece that was deciding about it, if it's a test roll or if it's going through the roads, and it was based on if the wheels were turning. So if the car was stopped and the engine was working, then it was assuming it is during a test. Later it was the test was updated, so front wheels were moving during the test. So the update for the software was that all 4 wheels have to be moving, that the car would assume that it's going on a road. And in automotive, it's very restricted way of producing software. So every software unit that is being developed by the developers has to have a set of business and functional requirements. There has to be an architecture behind it. There has to be code, testing, documentation. And the funny thing that happened was that actually the cheating device had the whole V model of automotive being applied to it. So basically, when Volkswagen was trying to build that cheating device and embed it in their engines, they had the requirements, how it should work. They had the architecture, how it should be designed, developed, and embed to their cars. They run the development, they run the tests, they run the simulations, they run the field tests. And actually, nobody raised any issue. Like, this is not ethical. We are cheating. We are doing something that will be bad for the environment, that will be bad for local communities or the whole climate. No, there was like managers and the leadership teams were silent, and then the testers were just running the tests they were supposed to do. And at the end, they proved that the cheating device actually works, so they push it to the production and they embed it to all the cars they manufactured in the US and Europe. So that was like my inspiration for this talk, my inspiration to try to convince people to be not afraid to face ethical decision in their projects. So we as the testers, we are responsible for giving a release candidate green or red stamp and say this is ready for production and this is not ready for production. But I feel there's a second layer behind it. And I think that we should be also considering what we are moving to production, how it will affect different groups of people, and if we want to be a person who is responsible for giving that to the real life. Sometimes the project managers or the product owners or the program managers are so focused about the business that sometimes they don't care too much about the users, for example. There's always like a discussion about what we are producing. Do we produce it to achieve business goals? Or do we produce it to have the users, the great functionality or a great product? And sometimes those goals don't match each other. Sometimes they are totally opposite to each other. There are many organizations who push out like a new version of the software and they care less about how the users will use them. If it's an internal application, it's a matter of decision. Today we are changing an app and you all have the instruction, you need to learn it. And we don't care if it's usable and if it's easy to learn, and if you are 20 years old or 60 years old, if it's easy for you to learn a new application or it's totally hard for you. If we need to change your Windows machines to a different operating system. I know a history when there was a library having a computer usage class for elder people in the UK. And they were using Windows Vista and some sort of email client. And one day somebody decided that they will upgrade all those computers to Windows 10. And basically half of the people stopped going to that library and stopped sending and receiving emails. And when they do, they send out like volunteers to ask those people why you are not using your email anymore. And they say it's easier for me to lose my contact with my family and don't have those emails than learn a Windows 10 out of the box as a new operating system and learn Outlook as a new email application. And that was the moment when the business goal was achieved and the users just stopped using the software. And one of the things that for me is very important is that the organizations have to have the way to set stage for ethical behavior. So they need to support ethics. And if your manager says ethics, you shouldn't see those hands saying that no, that we don't follow them. I think the organizational ethics are very important both for managers and for testers and for every employee. Like they want to work in a company that is ethics of that company is in line with their personal. And that's one of the first rules. Like usually when I'm joining a new company or I'm speaking with a different customer even as a company, I'm asking them how they solve some ethical dilemmas, how they approach them, do they discuss with your users, do you discuss with your employees? And I really prefer to be in a project when those goals and principles are aligned, when my personal approach to a challenge is very similar how my customer or my company would approach it. And ethics spread in organizations. So when there is an ethical dilemma, like you want to cut corners in your project, at the beginning it feels like a small decision, like are we ready for a demo? Like after 2 weeks sprint, if we go have a happy path scenario that it's working, but there's something that it's still not ready, do we do a demo or not? Do we want to say that this is not fully finished or not? Because when you start to cut corners, when you start to make those shortcuts on an ethical level for your customer or for the product owner, then it's really easy to repeat the same mistakes again and again. Every decision you make on your daily work will have an impact even for the long-term strategy of the project or long-term strategy of organization. And those ethical dilemmas, those ethical decisions usually affects people in the organizations. The easiest place to find it at the beginning is the recruitment. So if your company is, in your personal perspective, not ethical, usually you will not recommend your friends to work with you in that company. Because that's like the first thing you will notice. The other thing is, if your company is really ethical and it has open communication about it, and it tells people around how they work, and they really do it, then it's a lot easier to attract new people to your company. So many companies in Poland, and I think it's the whole Europe market, we've got a huge problem with having a lot more open position than candidates to fill them in. And sometimes the easiest way to just get more people interested in your organization is just to be ethical and then be loud about it. And then if you say you do projects particular way, then do it this way. That it shouldn't be like one of the projects being like the best one and all others are just scrappy and we don't follow any rules and everything is wrong. Because after a month or 2 months, everybody on the market will know about it. And they will tell you that if you're joining this particular project, it will be fun. But if they propose you to a different project, just reject the offer. So then there's a second side of this ethical behavior. So sometimes it's a matter of how the employees would behave, how the Scrum team or how the developer or tester will behave, and then how it affects the organization from the bottom to the top. So like the opposite side that I told before. So there's a lot of places when project teams or delivery teams have to handle difficult customers, and it's not a decision on a level of CEO of organization or program manager. Sometimes it's like a small delivery teams working for a project managers from an outside company, like if you are in software house and there's an external customer, and then you need to handle that people. Sometimes it's a program manager internally, sometimes an external customer. And you need to work with them as a tester, as a product owner, as a Scrum Master, as a developer. There is a lot of places where those people will try to impact your project, and then those impacts will scale up to the whole organization. If you make shortcuts in your project and they work, and you say to another project that you made this shortcut and it worked, then probably the second project will try to repeat your way to just cut the corners. And then suddenly the whole organization will be treating that as a good practice, not as a single time solution that we need to provide because it was a difficult customer and deadline was coming. They will treat it as a good practice. It worked once, it will work every time until we get caught. So one of the things is to discuss with people on an internal meetings or inside your projects that no dilemma is too small to be ignored. No shortcut is too small to just say, oh, we do it only one time. It will be easy. So one of the easiest way how it approach is in project management. So you've got a sprint. Like, let's assume it's the 2-week sprint. And then you did a week and a half. Everything is ready. You plan the rest of 2 days only for refactoring and only for preparing for a demo session. And then suddenly there's a project manager and he said, oh, your board is empty. Let's take a new feature in. I know it won't fit in this sprint, but we can start it and then we can finish it during the next sprint. So the whole approach to freeze the scope for a sprint will be broken. Then he used some different methods how to push you to take it. And then during the demo, everything falls down. There was like commit done by developer who's working on totally different feature. And he did that commit like late evening yesterday, and today morning on a demo, nothing works. And that's the problem that might happen. Like one single decision might affect the whole project. The whole demo will be set as failed, but the thing is that you won't achieve your goal, but it was not a part of the scope of the sprint. What was the reason for not achieving the goal? And I think you need to remember about that. This happens not only in a project, this happens in the whole organizations. This shortcut being used by managers, by anybody, can affect you. And one of the things that is really important, and I work with my teams this way, is I speak often with my team members. I try to have like a weekly sync meetings with them, either as a whole team or with particular people. I try to know as much as possible about their daily work and speak with them how they feel about what they are doing, how they feel about the interactions with development, for example, because it's a team of testers, how they feel about the tooling, the CI. And one of the things that I propose to them is if they've got any problem, I give them the freedom to propose solutions. And then we try to book a meeting or book a small conversation with people involved in that solution, and we try to convince other people to let us try to this approach, or let us try to solve the problem that we've got in a way that was proposed. And one of the things that is important for me, I try to support the proactive activities from my team members. So usually I hope that they will come to me with a solution instead of a problem. And the best way scenario for me is when the tester comes to me, says, we've got a problem in our CI, I've got a solution for that, but I spoke with the CI team, DevOps team, and they reject my solution. And that's the perfect case scenario, because then I can have a meeting with them and with the tester. I can propose his solution and get rejected again, but now I just ask them for justification, because usually tester, when he hears that your proposal is wrong, we won't do it, usually it's like at the end of conversation. And for me, it's just the beginning. And then we speak about if this proposal was wrong, if we can adapt it, or if we need something totally different. And sometimes that's the moment when DevOps team can propose their solution, and then I can ask the tester, do you accept that? Do you want to do it this way? Do you want to pair with them and work together on a solution that will be the best for you? And sometimes it doesn't feel like this is an ethical problem, but sometimes it is. Like the moments when those testers and developers discuss with each other, sometimes they even hate each other. it ends up with like people shouting at each other, and like sometimes they reject commits or solutions only because they don't like one of those testers, don't like the developers, and the developers don't like the tester. So when he's producing test automation and there's a code review, he's always failing the code reviews. And sometimes it's just because the naming of the variable should be different or something strange. And then it ends up to like a war between testers and developers. And I've treated like more as an ethical problem, because I feel like the whole delivery team should be working together to deliver a product, and they shouldn't be forcing each other who is better, who is more important, who can make the decision, and who is just saying about stuff that he doesn't know about because he's only the tester, he's not the developer. And there's a lot of strange discussions around it. So one of the good things that you can do I do it as a test manager, but you can do it even as a tester, is first, you should understand all the trade-offs that happens during the project. If there's something happening that it's a shortcut or you feel that it's not correct, I think you should have the possibility and you should use it to ask about the justification. Why do we do it this way or the other way? Why we make an exception in this situation? And then they should give you enough information that you can either understand the decision or you can say, no, for me personally, I feel that this decision is wrong. And you then should be able to justify your decision. And one of the good things that you can do, you can build and promote policies. You can build and promote good practices. And then you can affect the organization by giving good examples as good practices instead of giving like shortcut as a good practice. Like we do only demo. The best shortcut I ever heard is we do demo by only presenting a working happy path scenario. That's wonderful. Like I was once a Scrum Master in a team that there was a rule in that organization that they were doing sprint reviews the way that they were only showing a happy path scenario. And there were so many teams that when you ask them during the middle of that scenario, can you click there? Like totally outside of the scenario, and everything fails. And they were like defending themselves. No, we cannot click there. Why you cannot click there? Because it's not a part of the scenario we want to present. And I said, yeah, but it's only a label. It's not a button. It won't do anything. So you can click over there and then you can continue with your scenario. And they said, no, we need to continue with our scenario. And it was so funny. Like they were so much focused on defending themselves. And then when suddenly product owner or program manager was like really curious about why am I asking about this label, and he just said, okay, stop that discussion, just click there. And they just click and everything breaks. And it was like, why you want to present a software that only works in a happy path scenario, and you actually, all of the team know that any other click will fail the whole product. So why you didn't prepare the whole solution and then invite the program manager or the product owner to show him the review? Now you're selling him that this feature is done. You've got like half of the backlog still not finished, and you will put it in a like stabilization phase of this feature to just cut the corner how big was the cost of development and how much is in maintenance. And it's so sad. So what are the biggest threats that affect people in the organization? So one thing that I already mentioned is the lack of shared understanding what happens around. You need to understand the decisions that are being made by the organization. If you don't understand them, usually it might be a risk of a problem with the company being open and honest about why we make certain decisions. Sometimes there's an ethical disconnect between people and organization. I felt it once when there was a company, the software house I was working in has a project with industry that I didn't want to work with. And I asked my manager to to just switch me to a different project, because I don't want to work. It was connected with alcohols or something. And yeah, and my manager said, no, you are assigned here and you will work here. So I think then this creates problems, because I was unhappy for the whole duration of that project. The problem and the risk is the conflicting stakeholder needs. I won't say like from top to bottom, but I just mentioned how many different stakeholders or users or customers you can have in your project. It's everybody: employees, suppliers, clients, society, environment. And the thing is that you can affect your project manager to don't favor one group over another. Sometimes users and customer is equally important. It's not like we need to fill the business needs, but we can forget about the users. The thing that is a risk is not giving the autonomy to challenge the decision. I think every ethical organization should give you that autonomy. They should give you a way to discuss and challenge the approach that company has to different groups and different people. And for me personally, testers are the best group of people that can do that change in organization. Testers are the group of people that understands the technology, that has awareness of the challenges and problems that developers have. But from the other side, we are one of the first groups that speak with customers or speak with users. So we know the both ends. Usually when there's like a business analytic, he only speaks with the customer. When there's a developer, he just wants to get the requirements, the architecture, and just produce the code. And if they will have to work in maintenance of the solution, they will hate it. But I know many testers that, for example, they do like a weekly dry runs on a program support team, like they pick up the calls from the users. And they just speak with them, they just ask them how do you use the software, just to understand better how to approach it during the testing. And the things that we as a tester could easily do and how to affect both the organization and the projects is we can acknowledge and discuss the ethical ambiguity. The thing that I usually hear often on the meetings, when there's a developer or a project manager, when there's a question set to them and they respond, oh, it's complicated. And I love to work with testers who respond, no, it's really easy, and they just give an examples. So I've seen so many situations when there was, for example, a product owner asking about changing of the approach, changing of the tools that we use, or changing the process, getting the response, it's very, very complicated from developers. And then there's a tester saying, no, it's very, very easy. And then when they cross the arguments, it turns out that we can change the process in like 3 days. And we can use a different process. We can shorten the sprints from 4 weeks to 2 weeks. Or we can do it the way that Niels was, for example, describing today, that we do like 1 week iterations of work and then 2 week iterations of delivery. And it's not so complicated. We just change the way how we estimate. We just change the way how we start and finish the iteration, but the whole solution is the same. The other thing is to clarify the technical trade-offs and ethical trade-offs. So every time there's a developer trying to cut the corners, there's a project manager trying to cut the corners, we have the opportunity to speak with everybody, so we can describe what's the deal and what's the risk behind it to all of the interested people. And then we can say, if we cut something over here, then it will hit us over there, and that will be the repercussions. How big will be the impact of a small change affecting the solution today, or the technical debt being like rising and rising? How much it will affect the testing or the product regression in 2 weeks or in a month or in 3 months? I think we should be the role models for the ethical decisions, So there are many places when if we say that we are not allowing the release candidate to be released to production, then nobody should discuss it with us. Like, this is our recommendation. And I think that the good thing is that the testers could provide a good justifications for their decisions, and then it's easy for the organization to support us. Like when I joined as a test manager to my product, the first 2 release candidates were rejected by me. And the funny thing was there were 4 different test managers before me, and nobody of them ever rejected the release candidate. And what was the most curious thing for my project manager was that I provide a less important justification for the reason why I reject the release candidate than previous test managers were approving release candidates, but with a condition. And this condition for them was more important. For my project manager, was more risky than the reason why I rejected the release candidate. But I still told him that this is my decision. If you decided to move it to production without my approval, you can still have the chance to do it. And the thing that I try to start with is to embed the ethical corporate decisions inside the programs and policies. So when I'm writing test plans, when I'm writing test strategies and all other stuff, I provide them as clean rules as I can, and I try to embed spaces or moments when the QAs can raise their doubts. And this is like a part of the process. It's not something that QA needs to organize a dedicated meetings because he's got some questions to ask. This is a part of the process. There's a meeting when there are all of the team members, and anybody is available, and everybody has the chance to raise any questions they've got. And there is no risks, like there's no space for it that somebody will reject those. We will just note them in, and if we can respond to them quickly, then we will. If we cannot, then it will be still noticed, and it will be somewhere in Jira or somewhere in minutes from the meeting on somewhere else. But it will be part of the program, the part of the QA policy, how we approach, for example, testing. And I personally believe that we need to allow testers to handle all of those problems. So if there's any issue happening, I'm always like, I'm trying to empower my team members to not only notice that this is the risk that is happening, but they can not only provide the description and they can provide what it could be the impact, but I also try to ask them, we will talk about it on a meeting in 3 days. Prepare a solution, a workaround, how we can solve it as a whole delivery team. And then this tester comes to a meeting, he asks some ethical questions, and he challenged the project manager or development that they are doing something wrong, but not as a question, but in the next sentence, he just provide them how you can do it better. So they don't have to say, yeah, we did it wrong and we need to find a new way to do it, but they can just say, oh, I like the new idea, let's do it the new proposed way. And then it's not so hard for them, or it's not so tricky for them that they need to commit that we did it wrong. They can just focus on the part how to do it better. And I think that we need to embrace the higher cost of our work. Yeah. So one of the most important things for me personally is that I feel like testers in many of the projects are the only persons that should be and can be worried about the users. So developers usually are geeks. They are like focused on the technical fancy stuff. And then there's the project managers who is only oriented on the business goals. And there's a tester who can say, don't do it this way because the users, even if the customer is not yet knowing how it will affect the users, I know. I work with users in 10, 15 different projects before, and I know how it will be. So I hope you will be inspired to try to be a part of this ethical guardians in your projects. There is a summary, but I will probably skip it because we want to move to the Slido questions. So probably you will get the slides from the organizer on a web page, so you can just double check that. I think that the problems that come from the wrong ethical decisions are much more costly than business goals being postponed. In Volkswagen, it was $30 billion. Like a single wrong device inside the car affects them very, very high. So inside the slides, you will have the contact information for me. I won't be available in the current Ask Me Anything corner session because I've got one additional presentation in 2 hours. Sorry, in 1 hour, actually. So I will be in Ask Me Anything corner after the second presentation, and if you've got any questions connected with this one or the other one, feel free to catch me. And are there any questions from the audience?